Before we start today's episode, I wanted to let you all know that Quiet Connection is now on Patreon. With 3 membership options to choose from, you can expect things like ad-free listening, bonus episodes, and goodies in the mail once a month. Check out our Patreon site or our website to sign up. And thanks for helping us continue to create content and spread awareness about postpartum mental health. Hi, welcome to Quiet Connection, a podcast dedicated to ending the stigma around postpartum mental health. I'm Chelsea. In this episode, we hear from Leah, who shares her experiences with attachment-style parenting and how it has benefited her confidence as a mother. Let's hear from Leah. Hello, I am here today with Leah. Hi, Leah.
Hi, Chelsea. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing this morning?
I am really good, actually.
That is so good. We're right on the cusp of Mother's Day. So hopefully you're gearing up for that. And hopefully your family has something nice planned for you.
I think so. Yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. It's nice to have a little surprise sometimes. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So let me think. I live in Rhode Island, and I live in a sort of, nondescript burb of Providence. And I have 3 children. I have a 9-year-old, a 10-year-old, and a 6-month-old.
Wow.
Yeah, quite the gap.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my older children are boys, and from a previous marriage, and my daughter, my 6-month-old, is from my husband and I, and we typically don't distinguish that, like, oh, these are the other kids. We don't do that, but for the purposes of the podcast, it seems relevant. But yeah, that's us. I'm a clinical mental health counselor in training, so I have 1 year to go before I get my provisional license. But I do take people now under supervision, both virtually and in person. And
Awesome.
I largely work with kids and moms. New moms are really a focus. I haven't gotten as many new moms as I'd like, but I'm still sort of nascent in my work, so I'll get there. And I have a previous career in higher education administration.
Oh, very nice.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that work. It was really hard to find something in my field in Rhode Island after my divorce. So, I kind of had to pivot and think about what I could do and where I could make an impact and what would be family friendly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I came into counseling, and I've just fallen in love with it. It's been a really cool journey so far.
That's really cool. I'm so glad that you found something you could be passionate about.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. What are some things that sort of fill your cup? What do you like to do outside of being a mom?
Nobody ever asks moms that, so thank you for asking.
Sometimes it's hard to think of an answer.
No, not for me.
Good.
I love to garden.
You garden.
Mm-hmm. I'm no expert, but I'm very much an enthusiast. I love to garden. I am very much at home puttering around in my yard. That's where I'm happy.
You're the total opposite of me. I have a total brown thumb and I kill everything I touch.
No, I'm sorry. Where are you located out of? I don't actually know.
I am in Vermont.
No, you're not. That's where I
am.
went and got my first graduate degree. I love Vermont. I plan on moving back there in a few years.
Yeah, I'm a native Vermonter.
So jelly.
I'm like a true Vermonter too. I'm like several generations back. So it's expensive to live here, but
it really is.
But I don't think I'd make it anywhere else. I love it here.
Yeah. No, I'm eking it out here, but I'm waiting as soon as the only reason I don't currently live there is because there was a sort of a custody dispute, and my ex-husband and co-parent was like, hey, I really want you here because I'm here, and that's the way the judge saw it, so here we are. But yeah, the minute that they're safely ensconced in their post-secondary plan, they know we're all packing up together, and their bedrooms will be beautifully recreated somewhere in Vermont. So where in Vermont are you?
I am in which is northern Vermont. So yeah, I love it here. That's a small world, little connection. Where did you get, you said you got one of your graduate degrees here?
Yeah, my first one, I got a Master of Education from UVM, and that was where I did higher ed admin. And I actually interned at one point at BFA St. Albans, which was so much fun. And I lived there at another point briefly for 3 years and worked for the Agency of Education and wrote policy for K to 12. So
That's
that was
very, very cool.
Yeah.
My husband works at UVM.
Hey.
And I was a special educator. I worked in special ed for 10 years before I had my youngest. So lots of little connections.
It's a very small world. I think people forget that we are very much connected by probably maybe a few relationships. And there it is.
What is that thing? It's like 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon or something like that.
Yeah.
Like everybody's connected.
I love it.
Yeah, that's so cool. So, okay, so you like to garden, and that makes you happy. This question I tend to ask everybody, who were you before you were a mom?
I was not gonna be a mom.
You were not?
All. Oh, no.
Okay.
And honestly, the only reason I'm answering this question is because we're in this format, and I know the audience. But when I don't know the audience, I'm very hesitant because what I end up saying is the truth, which is that I did not want children. And my kids know this because I've said, which sounds horrible, but it's not. I tell them, I'm like, you're the biggest surprises of my life. Like, you want to talk about a surprise party times 1,000? Each of you was that. Just like, I said, so don't close yourself off to possibility. It's one thing to say, this is what I want and this is what I want to do, and I support whatever that is. But if you get surprised, please roll with it.
Yeah.
Try to roll with the surprise if you can. And, I'll help you with that too, if that's the case. But, I've always been a rebel, not like a cool rebel, like the rebel in a principal's office kind of rebel, like dunce cap rebel, like, so I ask too many questions. I challenge authority. I don't do things the way I'm supposed to, et cetera, et cetera. But, yeah, I was working in higher ed, doing career counseling, and probably drinking too much, I'd say. Definitely drinking too much. But I was having a lot of fun. And hanging out with my girlfriends was very much part of my life. I loved to go out to fancy bars with my friends. Which in hindsight is like, oh my God, you and your disposable income. I love thrift shopping, but like not thrift shopping where you're like, oh, I'm going to buy 10 t-shirts for the price of 2. But like, oh my goodness, these are opera length kid skin gloves that I'm going to wear with that fabulous dress the next time I go out.
You went like vintage shopping. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, I look back at photos and I'm like, that's how it's done. I definitely feel like I had a lot of fun doing that. I was always very artistic, but not like formally trained. I went to school originally at Emerson College in Boston for musical theater performance, which was very, very competitive. And I sang and acted and danced. I'm a good singer. I'm a fair actor, and I'm a miserable dancer. And I ran out of money. And I wanted to stay, and I had too many jobs. And in the end, I took a scholarship that I was still luckily being offered at my state school in Rhode Island, and switched my major to English, which I thought was very practical. Maybe compared to musical theater was practical, but I got a BA in English in 2008. So you tell me how practical that is.
Yeah. Seemed like a good idea at the time.
Actually, it worked out for me. It did. And I'm lucky, and that's all that was luck. But yeah, so who I was, worked with students, always loved working with first generation college students, women, underserved communities. Yeah, and I just spent a lot of time with my friends, going out. I really didn't want to have a domestic life. The whole thing just looked absolutely unappealing.
Yeah.
If someone told me about oxytocin, I think I would have I would have been receptive to that conversation. I would have been like, I'm sorry, what? You get what? What happened? Interesting. Uh-huh.
So you were living your best life.
Oh, yeah.
And then you kind of had some surprises. Tell me a little bit about that.
I was at a professional conference in Phoenix, Arizona for NASPA, National Association of Student Personnel Administrators, folks who work in colleges.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a big deal. And when it happens, you go to all of these workshops that are super interesting. And you're like, I mean, if you're nerdy into this stuff, you're like, this is amazing. You're having such a great time all day. You're also miserably hungover because every night you're connecting with all of your friends from graduate school who scattered to the winds and you're partying like an animal. And that's what you do at NASPA. And that's fine. And you wear your sunglasses and drink your Gatorade dutifully during the day. And you write notes because you're enjoying every minute of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was my 4th conference, I think. And at that conference, I went to bed at like 10, 11 o'clock. And my roommate, who was a friend, was like, I remember she packed tequila. We're in Arizona. You can get tequila here, Colleen. They sell it. I guarantee you. But she packed her tequila and checked that bag. She didn't want to, I don't know, have to struggle with transportation. She wanted it right there at the hotel because we were going to make margaritas, damn it. And I got in and was like, ooh, yeah, I'm going to have to take a pass. Mm. It's like, who are you? I said, I'm tired. I don't know. It was a long flight. But then the next night I felt the same way. And then I started drinking smoothies. I don't drink smoothies much. At least I didn't then. And I was like, that's all I wanted. I wanted fresh fruit and smoothies. That's all I was just craving them horribly. And then it's just odd. It's just when it was my 4th conference and you stay out all damn night, like it didn't sit right. But whatever. Maybe it was just I don't like desert, so it could have been that. Who knows? I wasn't hearing hooves thinking zebras. But anyway, I had a red-eye flight back to Boston, and I get into Logan Airport. And I had a miserable flight. I couldn't sleep. My stomach was churning. Finally get in, and the first thing I do out of the gate was I just heaved my upper half into a trash can. And
no.
Just the whole half of me just folded into it, and you can figure that out. I got on the T and called my boss and said, yeah, I'm not coming in today. And he was like, you promised you'd be at this career fair and do this thing and blah, blah, blah. Long story short, I was pregnant. I didn't think I could get pregnant. I was not married at the time. And I looked at my partner and he was overjoyed and I was horrified. But, I had that moment where I looked in the mirror after you see whatever it is, the 2 lines, the 1 line.
Yeah, 2 lines.
And it was like in the Santa Claus. I said, I'm in big trouble. I'm in big trouble. I was living in a 3rd floor walk-up in Providence, It wasn't a place for a baby.
So you said I'm in big trouble. What did you make of that?
I did the only thing that I could think to do that made sense at the time, which is, it sounds horrible in my head, but it's the truth. I bargained.
Okay.
Not with God. It wasn't like, if you do this for me. No, I bargained with my partner. I was like, listen, all right. I know how badly you want children. I know you want children. This is important to you. I said, believe it or not, I'm actually considering this. Maybe this could be okay. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here because I don't want to just do this. I grew up with a single mom who struggled, mainly because I had a father who didn't pay child support. So there's that, but she worked hard. I mean, she definitely was doing her very best, but it's tough out there. And then I went into foster care when I was 13. So I know what deprivation can look like in different iterations. And I do not want to be a single mom. I am not interested in that life. I'm not interested in struggling anymore. And it's not to say every single mom struggles. All of the disclaimers, the people I respect the most are single moms. I can't do it. I can't hack it. And the people say, well, you don't know you can until you... Yes. I know. If I had to, I would figure it out. But I am going to do everything in my human power to prevent that, because that's literally the scariest. That's my scary. That's my scary.
You knew that about yourself.
Oh, yeah. And so I was like, look, I know what protective factors are. Okay. Protective factors, for those who don't know, are kind of these elements of your life that can act as insulation against risks that could otherwise kind of tear your life apart, throw you into poverty, throw you into the prison system, any number of things. And I said, all right, look, I don't want to rent. Let's buy a house. I don't care how small it is. It could be a tiny house. I don't give a shit. Can we just buy a house? I want to know that we buy a house. I want to know that, out of Providence, I wasn't comfortable living where I was living.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like us to get married. We were already talking about getting married. That wasn't like, we were just kind of taking a circuitous route. But I said, those two things have to happen. I said, like, you need to agree that we're doing this.
Mm-hmm.
I said, and finally, I need to know that I don't have to work, because I have no idea how I'm going to want to play this. And I don't want to have to be ripped away from a baby if I don't have to be.
Mm-hmm.
I said, so we're going to have to scale our entire life on your income. And that places a lot of pressure and burden on you. Can you do that? He was like, yes.
Because he really wanted that baby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And once I knew those safeguards were in place, I could let my guard down and enjoy it. And it was terrifying, because it's always terrifying. But it was like, I'd never actually been like, oh, if I have a baby, this is what it's going to be like. I didn't know.
Right. You didn't picture your life with a baby.
I had no idea what I was doing. And so that's what we did. In like 6 weeks, that's what we did.
Wow.
Yeah. No, he was in that particular context, he was very much a man of his word. In that 6 weeks, that all went down.
Wow.
We got married. We bought a small home that was based on his income alone.
Okay.
We structured everything. I ended up leaving my job because I was getting sick all the time. And the commute from Providence to Boston, I worked in Boston at the time, was just miserable. And we moved into that little house, and, you know, things happen. We were not, we were happy for a few years, and then we weren't. And he's still my co-parent, so it's important that I respect his privacy.
Mm-hmm.
But we both moved on, and, we both own new homes and have remarried, and he seems happy, and I know I'm happy, and that's worked out in that way. Certainly not perfect, but
nothing ever is.
No, but that was what that transition looked like. And yeah, I ended up staying home for I did get a job after I had the baby for a year. I worked full-time for a year for a nonprofit, and then I did that, and then I found out I was pregnant again, and I was such an idiot. I'm at the OB's office, and I said, "You're going to have a baby." And I said, and I was actually there for Morena.
Oh.
I said, "No, that's not possible. I already have a baby," because I really, I didn't think about these things. They were not part of my life. And they were like, no, you're going to have a baby. I was like, no, but I have one at home. They're like, you're going to have a second one. I'm like, you can do it that fast? And they're like, yeah.
Oh my
goodness. So I
goodness.
did that.
Yeah, because they're what? They're like a year apart?
16 months.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. They're best friends and worst enemies, you know.
I can imagine.
I grew up as an only child, so I don't know how any of that works, but it's wild to see them figure it out. And I was, in hindsight, I was not very kind to my firstborn in how I introduced him to his brother. There's all these books, like how to tell your child that they're not alone anymore. I didn't read any of it, and I really should have, because I brought the baby home, and my 16-month-old is looking at me like, what the hell is that? And I didn't know what to do, so I gaslit my kid, and I just said, Asher, your brother. And he was like, no, I don't. And I was like, no, come on, Asher. And he just looks at me, he's like, are you sure? I'm like, you must have forgotten. And he was like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess, yeah, hey, what's up, buddy? And he just went with it like that. And all my friends were like, you're horrible.
Well, you did what you thought You did what you thought you needed to do.
Not my proudest moment. I should have read something.
Should have read a thing.
He didn't remember what he had for dinner the night before. How many times was I going to have that talk with him until it stuck? I didn't have time for that. I just, he didn't understand. So he went with it. He was just like, all right, yeah, hey, what's up, buddy? Like, it's just.
Yeah. And he just had a little friend ever since.
You could say that. Worst enemy friend, yeah.
I'm assuming they're at quite a fun age right now. My oldest is 7, but I cannot imagine having a 9 and 10-year-old. 7 is quite enough sass for me right now.
Ooh, you're getting some sass.
Oh, I'm getting quite a bit of sass. Yeah.
What's that look like?
Well, I am raising 2 very strong, independent women, and I'm so proud of that, but it also means that my oldest feels very comfortable being strong and independent to me and my partner. So rather than everything sort of being easy, a lot of things are a fight or a challenge because she wants to understand why. And that's great. But sometimes the reason is because it's bedtime. Or sometimes the reason is because I'm exhausted. And so that's been a challenge, but I do not have the privilege of raising boys. I always pictured myself as being a boy mom. What's that like? And I don't love, I'll preface this. I am not a gender subscribing individual. I identify as non-binary, but I always sort of pictured my life as having boys. So I'm always very, very curious what that is like.
Well, I think what's scary for me is anytime I hear any kind of rhetoric around violence, even if it's age appropriate, even if it's cultural context appropriate. I'm raising white men.
Yeah.
What are they going to be like? Are they going to be willing and able to exist in a vulnerable space instead of raging out? And, I'm sure there's a certain segment of your listeners hearing this are immediately like tightening up a little bit because what's wrong with white men? There's nothing wrong inherently with white men. We know that. What's wrong is that there's a culture that doesn't let them feel, and so they lash out a lot of times. And that can be really damaging. It can be damaging to women. It can be damaging to people of color. It can be damaging to non-binary people, indigenous people. It can be damaging to anyone who doesn't look, talk, sound, or come from the same background because different is bad.
Yeah.
And that's not okay. And so, like one of my kids, I'm not going to say which, but at one point, one of my kids was like, I don't like black people. And just said that in line at Target. And I looked down at him.
At Target.
And I looked down at him and I was like, I'm sorry? Did you just say you don't? He's like, yeah, I don't like black people. I said, why? And he goes, because, they're dark. And I said, and you can't see them coming at night? What are you afraid of? I said, they're fine. What's wrong with black people? And he goes, well, they're just weird. I said, let's unpack that in the car.
In the car, please.
Yeah. And in the car, he just explained, the more he talked about it, the more it became clear that he didn't know any black people. And when he did see a black person, he was afraid. And he turned that fear into, well, I don't like you. And that, for me, felt like the beginning of a decision. And I was like, nope. So, it became Black History Month in our house. And I don't know that actually helped. And I know that having friends of color and friends from different backgrounds than me makes a big difference. What am I going to do? Call them up and be like, hey, so we haven't seen each other in a long time. Can I tokenize your children? No.
No. Yeah.
No. So, and so figuring out what exactly that is going to look like to give my kids a practical education in supporting people and not thinking of themselves as better or safer or more familiar because of skin color. I'm not amazing with that.
That's
I'm
a
not.
really, really interesting take, though. That's not where I thought the answer to that question would go. And I kind of love that. You have to really think about who your boys are going to be in the world because of the inherent position they were born into, just being
Yeah.
born white males.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. One of the things that can be helpful, I think, is leveraging the fact that we're Jewish, and
Okay.
trying to remind them of, you know, the fact that there are people who think that we're different and wrong and unfamiliar and frightening. And, what does that feel like? It gives them an opportunity to at least exist in that space of other and try and think that through. But I still don't know that it's enough for them to really get their potential impact in the world. And then, you have to, the very Jewish thing then is to do the tevya and look up at God and say, well, on the other hand, and on the other hand, I'm thinking about these things during their childhood, their innocent years. And then I say to myself, well, on the other hand, the other moms I know of children of color, they're afraid for their kids because they don't know how their kids are going to be received into this world, or worse, they do know, and they're terrified. Yeah. And it's because I would stick my head in the sand, maybe, and not be extremely mindful of how raising my boys impacts their beautiful babies. So I go back and forth in that conversation. Be present for their childhood. Be present for their childhood. No, teach them the hard things. Teach them the hard things. Don't walk away from that. Don't shy away from that. And so that's what's hard about raising boys.
Wow.
What's, for me?
Yeah.
What's cool about raising boys? When it works.
When it works. Yeah.
When I see my middle child be very gentle with younger children and animals. And I praise the crap out of him and tell him how proud I am, how much I love that part of him, and how I think that that's incredible and beautiful and worthy and valuable. Like all parts, but, that in particular, I really want to highlight.
Yeah.
When I see my older son ask probing questions and not take something at face value, it's cool to see any child discover new things.
Yeah.
The moment they see the ocean. I don't know that that's a boy mom thing. That's just a mom thing. It's cool to be there and understand that they might fall in love with someone who's not explicitly a woman. Mm-hmm. And to be there for that and to get to be the person they need to say, I'm glad you have affection for someone. I'm glad that you admire them. And, someday when they're old enough, I'm glad that you're falling in love. I hope that you are thinking through how you want to be treated and how you want to be a good partner. It's cool to get to be there for that. It's cool to support things that are not necessarily traditionally male. And then it's cool to be there for stuff when they want to, be like, I'm going to do offense on the team. I don't know. They're very brave, these guys. These particular ones. I mean, mine, they just hurl themselves into stuff. I have one right now who's like, I'm going to do tennis. I was like, cool, let's do it.
Cool.
And I realized that I've always wanted to learn tennis. And so I said to him, I was like, will you teach me tennis? And he goes, yeah, sure, whatever. And I'm like, you will? And now I'm like, yeah, 2 for the price of 1. Look at that. 2 lessons. So now I'm getting him a racket, getting myself a racket. And I'm like, this is cool. But that's not a boy thing. That's not a boy thing. That's just a my kid thing, Well, so I don't know.
What's so cool to me in hearing this is going from the beginning of our conversation where you had said so adamantly you did not want kids, you did not picture yourself as a mom, and to hear how mindfully and how intentionally you are raising your kids and sounding like you enjoy it.
Oh, I do.
So that's very cool, because it doesn't always turn out that way. So it's yeah, that's cool to sort of hear about that transformation. And now you've got a little one.
Yeah. I'm in her nursery now. It's the only quiet room in the house.
So I'm in the kids' playroom. So yeah.
Yep.
So totally get that. But what's it like starting over again after 9 years?
Terrifying.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. I do not possess the same body. I do not possess the same resilience. I do not possess the same inexperience. I do not possess the same fears. I'm a much more chill parent. And I have a very different partner. And partnering with him is just absolute joy. We are having so much fun.
Oh,
every morning. Yeah, no, we're having such a good time. It's stupid. Like, we're stupid. We're stupid. We're just like, this is great. This is fantastic. Seeing the boys interact with their little sister. One is completely apathetic. You know, he's helpful. He'll do whatever, you know, hey, can you grab her toy? She dropped it, whatever. And then the other one's like, can I hold her? Can I teach her this? You know, it's just, oh my gosh. You know?
Yeah.
So, no, it's definitely different. I think my mother-in-law was, I don't know, I explained my particular approach to parenting young children is attachment parenting. And I think that, you know, that was new for her. I tried to be as supportive of helping her learn in a respectful, kind way. You know, she was much more of a, like, go back to work quickly kind of person. And I think that I don't know that was circumstantial or chosen. That could have been a combination of both. You know, there's a lot of privilege inherent in that statement. You know, I think I've just gotten really lucky. She's been tremendously helpful. I'm not close with my family. Foster care and no one stepping up kind of does that for me.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of chosen family.
Which is amazing. Chosen family can be even more important to us than our given family.
Yeah, they've really stepped up. I've been, you know, I'm part of a tremendous community of moms in Rhode Island. And Vermont, actually. So I have a lot of Vermont friends, mom friends. Now I have a new one.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I know when we chatted before doing this recording session, you had mentioned that you sort of had some anxiety with your first two kiddos, but you weren't necessarily having it with your little girl. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I was never formally diagnosed. I'll start with that. So this is more of a personal and a clinical hunch based on the training I've received. I believe that I had postpartum anxiety. And the reason for that was I really felt it was necessary to control all aspects of my baby's day for almost a year for each child. And, you know, I think if I didn't have the privilege to stay home, which was afforded to me by my partner at the time, it would have looked very different. I was able to control everything. And I did. And it didn't cause me any hardship.
Right.
I didn't have to balance more than that. I could prioritize one thing. It seemed to cause everyone else a huge amount of hardship because people wanted to have a bigger role, I think, in taking care of the babies. And I said no, because the folks that wanted to do that, grandparents, aunts and uncles, would not do things the way I had said, you know, this is how this needs to be done. And, you know, somebody could argue, well, you know, that's on them. That's not on you. But for me, it was an absolute, like, no, like, you're not going. And I had zero, you know, I point to the fact that I have autism, with
Mm-hmm.
this particular lack of giving a shit, if you will. It really didn't impact me. I was like, okay, you don't want to do what I'm saying is necessary. And so therefore the natural consequence of that is you don't get to spend time alone with the baby, but you can come here and hang out, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But you are going to have to schedule it with me, and you can't just drop in. And I'm not going to be guilted into it. No, you can't, push your way into my house. And no, I'm not going to be like, oh, wow, you drove 45 minutes to get here. I guess I should. No, I don't give a shit. You do it my way or you don't do it. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
These are your choices. And I mean, the kind of rage that brought out in older female relatives, holy crap. And they weren't really
Yeah.
my relatives. It was mostly my husband at the time. It was mostly his family, and I don't have to deal with them anymore.
Right.
So that's not my problem. But, I would say the fact that I felt I needed to control everything for my kids when they were babies, I didn't trust people.
Mm.
They weren't going to do what I asked. They weren't going to do what I said needed to happen. They weren't going to, for example, they'd skip naps.
Mm.
So when you say, like, what do you mean? They'd skip naps. They wouldn't feed the things I said to feed, or when I said to feed, or when I would say, like, I'm an attachment parent. That's not something that those relatives really understood on an intuitive level. And even if they didn't understand it, they disagreed with it. In fact, I remember some of the things that they said to me when I was pregnant being taken aside and saying, like, I think they were trying to be helpful, but they would say things like, you do not have to breastfeed. Don't let anybody make you think you have to. And I was like, thank you. That's very helpful. Like, I appreciate that, because it's true. You don't have to do that. If it's not for you, it's not for you. It's nobody's goddamn business. That's such a personal thing. That's between you and your doctor and your baby and your partner, if you have one, whatever. That is not for anyone to comment on. But, like, she was a nurse, so she was trying to, be supportive in that way. And I said, thank you. And I said, but I am going to try, especially with my first, I didn't know what I was doing. I don't know if my body's going to work in that particular way. It's trial and error.
Right.
And she was like, yeah, well, and don't let that baby manipulate you. Don't let that baby start, you don't have to pick him up every time he cries. Babies need to learn they don't run the show. And I was like, well, that's not possible. Babies don't think they run the show.
No.
All there is in their mind is their own needs, and they have one communication, and they're going to use it until their need is met. And there's nothing more complex to it than that. That's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, actually, I'm planning on picking up my baby when he cries, as much as I can. I'm probably going to let him hang out for a few minutes sometimes because, bathroom needs to happen.
Yeah.
There's things that are needed, and I will do those things. But other than that, I think that's going to be how I'm going to do this. And it bothered her. And when I really thought about why, I tried to imagine what it might have been like for her. And I can't know really what it was exactly like. I wasn't there. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that it was 100% expected that she work full time at a job where she had to be on her feet during irregular shifts that would have been very long when she had her children. And the same went for, and that was an aunt-in-law. And the same went for my former mother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
She had to work. Those were not options. And here I was with this economic privilege, and so I didn't want to disparage the choices they made in order to feed their families. That's not my business.
Right.
And I have no interest in making any mom feel that they're doing anything wrong by working. That was just what my reality was then. Yeah. The postpartum anxiety piece, was also me just very much holding a particular line. Like, this is what is going to need to happen. I didn't want to leave the house. For talking symptoms. I mean, I did for Target dates with my next door neighbor, who is a wonderful friend. And her and I would go on Target Tuesdays. That was like, honestly, and I was comfortable with her holding my baby and maybe 3 other people.
So you were feeling pretty isolated.
That's the thing. I didn't feel isolated. I was isolated. I didn't feel isolated. The way that manifested for me was that I was alone happily with my baby all the time for a year. And I was totally cool with it. And then I did it again. And it was less happily because now I had a toddler and a baby. So that's when I started taking medications to assist with that feeling of overwhelm.
Okay.
But no, I was fine. Everybody else wasn't. Why can't we just drop over and turn your house upside down with all of our kids? You know, there was someone who came, another in-law relative who showed up with like, I don't know if it was like 2 kids or 3. It felt like a ton of kids. I bet you it was only 2 kids. In hindsight now, I was such a weenie, total weenie. But like, you know, they showed up and there was like a loud toddler running around. And I just remember them like just going through my cabinets and just taking cereal out and giving that to their toddler. And I was like, what is happening? Why are you in my house? Who let you in? Like, I remember being very annoyed. And, you know, yeah, I guess I was kind of bitchy. I mean, I guess, but that's what it looked like for me. And so in hindsight, yeah, that was postpartum anxiety.
Yeah.
In hindsight, that's what that was. Did I feel anxious? No.
No, but you had this sense of needing to control every single teeny tiny aspect of everything in your life.
I don't know if it was teeny tiny. I wasn't super duper granular. It was like, to me, it was the important things. Naps.
Okay. Well, naps are a very important thing.
So like to some extent, I'm kind of like, how much was I gaslit about? You know, like I told you, that was an abusive relationship. So to some extent, I'm kind of wondering, but I did feel the need to just opt out of anybody else's opinion, except my pediatricians, who I love. I actually kind of grossed out by it, but I actually wrote a book, an ebook about it.
Yeah, you were saying that.
Yeah, and it was after my second child. I wrote The Zero Fucks Given Mama. And when I did that, it was very much couched in that sort of absolute certainty that like, no, I know better than you, and you're not going to make me doubt myself, and you guys can all go jump in a lake. Like, it's not, or go fly a kite, whatever. Like, I'm not making like light of, you know, but
no, I totally get it. But that's where you were at. So you've mentioned it a couple of times, and for listeners who may not be familiar, can you explain attachment parenting?
Oh God, I can try.
Or your version of attachment parenting.
So my understanding of attachment parenting is that this is something that is globally done in many communities, and isn't called anything. It's just parenting, but it's not common until, you know, maybe the last 10, 15, 20 years in the West. And the idea, you know, around it kind of became more mainstream in the United States when the baby book was published by Dr. Sears. And I don't know the exact year that was. I could Google that, but I don't know.
It's okay.
But the idea is that you're following these attachment promoting behaviors, APBs. And that's, you know, the attachment that you have to your child, to your baby. And it goes beyond bonding, right? Because you hear like, oh, did you bond when the baby, you know, the baby came? Oh, so-and-so didn't bond. It was very frustrating. I didn't bond. I had a difficult time. You know, there's lots of talk of this. This goes beyond bond. This is a type of relationship where you're getting the same measure of oxytocin, which is that emotional intimacy inducing, what's the word I'm looking? Endorphin.
Endorphin. Okay.
So the idea is that if you're doing these attachment promoting behaviors, you are feeding that stream of oxytocin for both you and baby. And what that does is it creates a calm, a trust, the ability to anticipate the baby's needs a little bit better. You're highly attuned. Yeah, there's a spectrum here of this. You know, there's definitely a spectrum of folks who engage in AP, attachment parenting. But some of those attachment promoting behaviors, if I was going to say what they are. So one of them is breastfeeding. particularly if you can extend it a little bit, whatever that means for you. Then there's bed sharing, where the baby sleeps in the bed with you, which is a very controversial topic.
It is.
That's a very controversial topic. There's a lot of conversations about safe sleep. The American Association of Pediatrics has taken a stance against bed sharing. But there are factors that can be controlled that make bed sharing safer. If you're going to, engage in that by controlling those aspects and managing them appropriately, it can be a far riskier situation. And so, doing that very mindfully and intentionally, it's not going to be a high level of risk. There is always risk involved.
There's risk involved in anything.
Right. And there's been some really interesting research done on the way that a mother curls next to a baby when she's breastfeeding in bed, and how the baby and the mom can co-regulate one another's breathing and heartbeat. So there's some information about how that can help reduce incidences of SIDS, because SIDS has been tied to stop breathing episodes. This is just, I am not a doctor. This is what I have read. This is what I understand. This is what has worked for me. This is not, the truth with a capital T. So it's really important that, I'm not saying that this is the way to be, or, if I'm interpreting the evidence that I've understood incorrectly, I'm open to empathic, supportive, constructive criticism. I don't always read everything right, of course, but this is what I've experienced. And so bed sharing is one of these APBs, attachment promoting behaviors. And then baby wearing, whether that's a sling or a soft structured carrier or one of those Moby wraps that is like origami to me. I can never figure.
I know. I can't do them. I can't figure them out.
They're hard. They're hard to figure out.
They are.
So those are 3 of the attachment promoting behaviors. One of the ones that definitely is harder, I think, to hold the line as a new parent is beware of baby trainers. And that's people who want to train the baby.
Yes. Yeah. Like sleep training and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't judge mothers who do what they need to do to survive. I also really struggle with the idea of crying it out. There is some evidence that shows that can be, is not always, can be harmful to the centers of the brain that deal with attachment, whether or not you will be listened to when you cry. Now, of course, if this is happening one time a day at bedtime, for example, versus, every single time it's time to sleep, they're different. There's many different iterations of this. So I can't, say something disparaging about a mom who engages in this in their own way. There's different methods of this, but cry it out is not for me. We'll just say that.
Right.
So beware of baby trainers. And that's also that whole, don't pick up the baby too much when they cry, or they'll learn that they can manipulate you. That's also.
Yeah, that's a tough one for me. Yeah. I can relate with that. Yeah. I can't leave a baby crying.
Right. When you can pick them up, it's like, I'm here. I've got you. You're fine. I can help you. I know there's more. They call them the baby bees. Beware of baby trainers, bed sharing, breastfeeding, baby wearing. You get there's a couple more, but you get the idea. It's meant to help that endorphin to continue to pump through your body. And the interesting thing about that is that it makes, for me, the time I'm with my baby satisfying, probably because I'm high. I mean, I think that's what it is. There are people who, are addicted to medications that give you a sliver of this feeling. So, or maybe I have a sliver of that. I don't know. But I know it's that sense of emotional intimacy. It's so huge. And I think I'd lose my mind parenting babies if I didn't get that. I honestly don't I can't fathom doing this without that. And that's very selfish of me. I will fully yep.
Well, you do what works for you.
Yeah, I can't imagine how overstimulated and frustrated and annoyed I would feel. I mean, I have those feelings, but I feel like I would be in a bad way. I don't feel like I would be totally okay without that steady stream of feel-good chemicals that those particular behaviors engender for me. Yeah, so that's attachment parenting, I think, in a nutshell, from what I understand.
And you did that with your boys, and you're doing it again with your little girl.
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah. And that's awesome that works for you.
Yeah.
And that was a great explanation of it, I think. And it's interesting because I think it's a lot of the things that new parents do without thinking about it.
Probably.
But then there are also parents that struggle with that sort of thing. Like I struggled with my first. I definitely didn't want a bed share. I wanted her to be close to me. Mm-hmm. So I did the sidecar thing. Yeah. But I was like, I cannot share my bed. I won't sleep. And I'm still that way with my kiddos today. If either of my kids are in bed with me, I'm awake all night. Oh, man. And I don't know if it's like a fear thing. I don't know what it is. But for someone like me, like that just isn't something that works for me. But I think that a lot of the other things and bed sharing for a lot of families are things that you just do unconsciously without thinking about it. And it makes sense if it's providing you with those endorphins that are helping you connect with your baby. And some of those things were some things that we suggested in our weekly theme series last week, like baby wearing. No. Yep, baby wearing was one of the things we suggested, and skin to skin as often as possible, and things like that. So they are ways to help you. Like you said, that it goes beyond bonding, but it's a good step into at least bonding with baby. Do you find that as your boys are getting older that you're seeing the benefits of those early days of attachment parenting style in the relationship that you have with them now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's wild.
Yeah, tell me a little more about that.
Wild. So the first glimmer I saw of it having a practical impact that assisted them was during the divorce between their father and I, which, I don't comment on that publicly much. It will just say very high conflict. There were times where I was very worried, wondering, what do they think of me? They were apart from me, at various intervals more than they ever had been. We have a 50-50 custody, and I'd had them pretty much all the time. Their grandparents had taken them towards the end of that on weekends and such, and that was tremendously helpful. But, he was working. He wasn't doing anything untoward, but he was working. Right. And so to be without them for, more than a few days, especially initially, was heart-wrenching. And I could guess that it was heart-wrenching for them. I didn't want it to be, but I guessed it would be. Mm-hmm. And what ended up happening was I had conversations with them after, because they were 3 and 4.5 at the time. Mm-hmm. I've had conversations with them, when they were grade school age, and said, what was that like for you? You didn't have the words to tell me then. What was that like for you? And I remember my eldest at one point saying, I wasn't sure you would come back, but my body knew you would.
Wow.
Right? When we think about things like trauma and, how the body holds trauma, if you've ever read van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score, that's sort of like a seminal book on that psychosomatic trauma. The inverse can also be true, apparently. And I hadn't ever considered that. that it could be a protective factor during trauma. The body can
Yeah.
hold on to maybe years and years of close nurturing where the trust had already been established. There's, I want to say it's Erickson's stages of development. I could be totally misquoting that, but the idea that between the ages of 0 and 3, what you learn is trust or not. And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
That is what you learn. That is your primary task, to learn trust, to move forward. And it was interesting to me that he genuinely felt that his body still felt connected to me through time and space. And that, oh my God, I wept. Not in front of him.
I mean, I would have lost it immediately. That is so profound.
I was like, Jesus Christ. I couldn't believe that had such an impact on him. And, my oldest and I, we intuit one another. We get each other. We look across a room, make a weird face, and an entire sentence has been said between us. It has always been.
Right.
My youngest boy, my middle child. I'm getting used to that. My middle child, my youngest boy, him and I don't always understand each other verbally. And so our primary language has always been a physical one. And we've had to lean on that. And so, there are things like lying with him before he goes to sleep at night, back scratches, that sort of thing, where he needed that and still needs that sometimes for a much more extended period, because that is the love language he needs from me. And that's how we come to communicate presence and love for one another.
Do you find that your boys are able to connect with your daughter now in a way that is almost like an attachment style because they've experienced that from you?
I'm not sure. I think I want them to have an organic relationship that's not foisted on them. And so I'm very cautious about placing them in any sort of position where they have to watch over her. I mean, she's 7 months old too. It's not like she's a toddler or anything, but
right.
I get that sense a little bit from my middle child, my younger son, a little bit. He can hold her and not panic if she cries and know that that's okay and that's normal. And he's still holding her. And, yep, it can hurt your ears for a minute. If I'm home in the house taking something hot out of the oven, for example, that'll be the kind of thing he'll hold her for that. Or if I need to run upstairs and get something, whatever, vacuum a room and I can't get her in the carrier. There's a number of things, but he loves to hold her. I don't know if they're going to develop in that way. I don't expect them to be nurturing right now. I really need them to focus on themselves. So they're not super attuned to people outside of them.
And that's the age that they're at too right now.
Yeah, they're 9 and 10, and hopefully they'll get to that place. But I do notice, say we're driving and my oldest is in the back seat with her and she starts crying. He will intuitively lean over and say, "Hey, what's going on? Are you okay?" And sort of attend in that way and see that as an opportunity to help support the need of the baby. Like, I'm here for you. How can I help you? And I appreciate that, instead of jumping to an annoyed response immediately, which would be a very normal thing for a child to do. Very normal thing for a child to be like,
yes.
"Geez, you're loud. Could you knock it off? Good Lord. Make it stop." And it's not to say that we don't all wince when she shrieks, but I try to model like, "Oh my goodness, that's really loud. If you need to leave the room, if you would like to," we actually built them bedrooms in advance of her coming, so that they wouldn't have to share the room right next to her nursery. Yeah. So they're actually on a different floor now, so they don't have to listen to that. And that's also because I wanted to make sure they got the sleep they need and had some space of their own. So we'll see. It remains to be seen, but I'm not too worried about it. They seem to respect me when I need to do those things. They don't roll their eyes or whatever, or give me a hard time about bed sharing or breastfeeding. I try to do so relatively discreetly, but I do breastfeed in front of them. I'm just trying to make sure that, the bulk of Mount St. Boob is is protected from view.
Yes.
No need to give the child psychologist any more fodder.
Well, I know that you need to get to your little one. So my final question for you would be, if you could go back in time and tell yourself anything about your life as a mother to sort of help you get through, what would you tell yourself?
It's going to sound very self-absorbed.
That's okay.
You're right. That's it.
Simple as that.
You're right. And I think, I would have in the few moments, and I think I had more moments in their like preschool years, toddlerhood and preschool years where I worried if I was doing things right, if, that's where the doubt crept in.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I think I handled it correctly. I always placed emotional well-being and connection above everything else. And, that didn't mean kids didn't get punished. That didn't mean that they got what they wanted every time. That didn't mean that, an egregious act was met with, oh, poor baby.
Right.
It meant that the egregious act always had some kind of a follow-up in addition to whatever age-appropriate consequence was needed there to hold the line. There was always some sort of check-in, like, what's going on with you? You're not an angry kid. Why are you acting so angry? Are you feeling a certain way? Can we talk about that? No, you're still not going to get screens for the next 3 days. Like it was still, there's still very much a punishment here. But what's going on with you? This doesn't feel like you. And so there was always that connection and that sense of checking in and concern for well-being. And that never, ever has I've never compromised that. And I'm proud of that.
That's great.
I think moms
That's awesome.
know. I think moms know.
Moms know.
I do.
Yep.
And I just hope that the moms that I worry about are the ones who have older moms around them telling them this is how things are going to be for you because that's how things were for them.
Yep.
And it's not.
And every experience is different.
Right. And they were probably doing the right thing for them too. I'm not suggesting otherwise. It's, we can't dictate to each other. This is how this has to go. I don't feel.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that for you. I do.
I love that journey for you.
No, I just like that you can confidently tell yourself, like, you were right.
Yeah.
You were right. So I will let you get to your little one.
Thank you.
But I greatly appreciate you telling your story.
Thanks for having me on.
Of course. And so for listeners, this is a two-parter. We had to do this in 2 parts. So I hope you enjoyed your Mother's Day, and I hope you enjoy your birthday today.
Yay. Thank you. I will.
All right. Thank you so much.
Have a good one, Chelsea.
Thank you again to Leah for being so flexible in our recording and for sharing her experiences through parenting 2 older boys and now her youngest little girl. If you want to follow along with us on Quiet Connection, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Quiet Connection or at Quiet Connection Podcast. A great way to show your support for our community is to leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform and consider sharing our episodes through social media. And if you'd like to share your personal journey, you can reach us through our website, quietconnectionpodcast.com, or by email at quietconnectionppmh@gmail.com. Join us next time where another story is told and you realize you are not alone. I see you.